Hello everyone. Before we go live, can I just ask everyone to turn their mobile phones off and say, as I need to do, that there is no planned fire alarm, so if it goes off, it's the real thing, so please exit the building the way you came in.
Okay, we're going to go live in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Well, good morning everyone and welcome to the Institute for Government. Welcome to those of you who are joining us online and those of you who are here with us in the room at Carlton Gardens. I'm Hannah White and I'm CEO of the Institute for Government, and I'm very pleased to welcome you here today for this keynote speech by the leader of the Conservative Party, Kemi Badenoch. Now, we know that the declining performance of public services was an issue that was at the forefront of voters' minds at the 2024 election. And we know from polling that voters care a lot about their access to and the quality of public services. This is an area where the Institute for Government has done a lot of work. So I'm really looking forward to hearing Kemi's thoughts on what reforms a Conservative government would make to public services and the civil service, particularly to how the public sector implements the Equality Act and how the public sector equality duty affects the delivery of services. And just to say, in terms of choreography, Kemi is going to speak, and then I'm going to ask her a couple of questions before we come to questions from the floor. Do join me in welcoming the leader of the Conservative Party, Kemi Badenoch.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. First of all, can I start by thanking the Institute for Government for hosting this speech on a very important and very sensitive matter. The body cam footage of Henry Novak's death is one of the hardest things I have ever watched because I knew what was going to happen. As I was watching it, I found myself willing the police to stop, willing them to think, to at least consider Henry's story and check if he had been stabbed. A lot of people have given all sorts of opinions. Some have blamed social media, others have blamed knives, racism, or the police. Some have tried to score political points, others have tried to avoid seeing what was there for all of us to see. There's been recrimination and finger-pointing, and believe me, there are many I'd like to point my finger at, but the job of a politician is not to tell people to be angry or to make people angry. It is to offer solutions. Henry's family could not have been clearer that they don't want his murder to be used as a weapon to divide. I met them last week. They are brave but broken-hearted. None of us would want to be in their shoes. What they want is for something good to come out of the outpouring of public shock and grief. They want the police to become an institution that we can trust again. And if we want to honor that wish, to honor Henry's memory, we need to ask the right question. I believe that question is, why did the police take an accusation of racism more seriously than the claim that Henry had been stabbed? This question goes beyond policing. Why are public bodies so unable to act with common sense when race or identity is involved? Why are they so distracted, busying themselves with things that have nothing to do with their core function? In March, I gave a speech explaining that the Conservative Party will remove identity politics from all public bodies. The speech I'm giving today is the result of work we have been doing over many months. Some of what I'm going to say is going to be very uncomfortable. But our job as legislators is to ask uncomfortable questions so we can do the right thing for the country. And the right thing for the country is to make sure the circumstances around Henry's tragic death never happen again. It is easy to blame the police officers who responded to that 999 call for what happened. The person most to blame was Henry's murderer. But the lack of common sense and the lack of compassion shown by the police was shocking. Something clearly went very wrong, and that is why I have asked the Prime Minister for a rapid and independent review. In some ways, I feel for those police officers because they were following guidance they have been trained on. guidance which does not apply equality under the law, guidance which says hate crimes should be treated as a priority. Many people don't know what is in this guidance, and that is why it needs to be exposed. This country was built on a belief in equality under the law. Magna Carta, the abolition of slavery, universal suffrage. Over centuries, we have enshrined in our law our belief that everybody in this country is equal. There is a reason Lady Justice is blindfolded. The idea that each person should be treated the same, regardless of who they are, is a value so deeply ingrained in our culture that most people in Britain accept it as a self-evident truth. But while we have been going about our business, activists have been taking Lady Justice's blindfold off. They want the law to treat people differently on the basis of identity groups, eroding a centuries-old principle that has made Britain the amazing country that it is today. Equality law, properly designed, should protect us all in the same way. It should be a shield, not a sword. It should protect people from discrimination. It should protect people from being treated differently because of their race, sex, religion, sexuality, disability, or age. This understanding and this principle are being perverted. Treating people equally and fairly will not deliver equality of outcome because sometimes a difference in outcome is fair. Modern Britain is the least racist country on earth. I speak from experience. As a child, I lived on 3 different continents. I have seen what life is like for ethnic minorities in other places. There is nowhere else on earth I'd rather be. There is nowhere else on earth that I would be doing the job that I'm doing right now as a black woman in a majority white country. It is because we are not racist, because we care so much about equality, that we have overcorrected and actually brought in rules that are actually discriminatory. How did this happen? When we saw high-profile incidents of injustice, like the murder of Stephen Lawrence, there was rightly public pressure to ensure an injustice like that never happened again. Stephen Lawrence's murder resulted in the influential Macpherson report, a report that wanted to put right what went wrong with policing in the 1990s. However, in attempting to do so, it also enshrined a principle which I believe is wrong, that a racist incident is racist if it is perceived as racist by the victim or any other person. This may have made sense in a different context long ago, but today, when we look at the response to Henry Novak's murder and the police's acceptance that the murderer was correct when he accused Henry of racism, it is clear that mere accusations are being accepted as facts. The Macpherson report led in 2001 to the race equality duty, which then morphed in the Equality Act to the public sector equality duty, which is what I'm talking about today, covering everything from race to sex to sexuality and much more. What do the Nottingham murders, the Southport attack, the Manchester Arena bombings, and the rape gangs all have in common? All these crimes could have been stopped if people had intervened instead of having a fear of being called racist. We would not have had so many girls abused by rape gangs if local authorities had not looked away because they were too scared to point out the obvious. That's why those unspeakable crimes went on for years. One parent told me that when she gave the description of her daughter's abuser, the police accused her of being racist. If the security guards at the Manchester Arena weren't afraid of being accused of racial profiling, we wouldn't have seen a bomber walk into the venue unchecked. If authorities weren't concerned that black people were overrepresented in mental health units, 3 people would not have been murdered in Nottingham by a man who should have been detained under the Mental Health Act. And if authorities hadn't chalked up Axel Rudekabana's violent behavior to autism, if his head teacher hadn't been accused of racial stereotyping when she raised concerns about him bringing a knife into school, 3 little girls might still be with us. Their families are all living a life sentence because others were too scared to raise the alarm. Some people will try to make race the cause of the crime. Race is not the cause of those crimes, but it is the reason these crimes are not being prevented. If public services were prioritizing their duty to citizens, the last words that Henry Novak ever heard would not have been a police officer reading him his rights. Each of these tragedies is different, but they expose a common weakness. Authorities conditioned to see minority status as victimhood. They withhold information, they avoid difficult conversations, and they allow reputational concerns to dominate their decision-making. They have spent so long worrying about institutional racism that they have become institutionally incompetent. They are systematically failing to fulfill their role to do what they are there to do. In the case of the police, catch and stop criminals. Section people whose mental health demands it. Investigate suspicious behavior. Confidence in our institutions is now collapsing. And how could it not? When people can see, as we do in my own constituency, Gypsy, Roma, and traveller communities breaking laws that no one else would get away with. When rapists are being put in women's prisons because the justice system prioritizes the protected characteristic of gender reassignment over women's privacy, dignity, and safety. When people see pro-Palestinian marchers chanting slogans that others would be sent to jail for tweeting. People will believe in two-tier policing when they see this. Common sense has gone out of the window, and people are left wondering which rules apply to whom. You can see how we got here. Each time a high-profile case involving race happened, like the shooting of Mark Duggan that sparked the 2011 London riots, or in 2022, the shooting of Chris Cabba, a man under suspicion of a double murder, police officers like Martin Blake were dragged through long and degrading public inquiries. These institutions stopped worrying about getting the law wrong and worried desperately about a career-ending accusation of racism. The safest path for them to avoid this accusation was not common sense or the facts in front of them. It was to follow the process. So people replaced thinking with box ticking. They outsourced decision-making to activists and left-wing pressure groups. I'll give you an example. The head of the supposedly independent Scrutiny and Oversight Board, a board which audits the police race action plans, the head of this tweeted about defunding the police. She was asked about her comments on the Today programme yesterday and defended her views. Some of these people don't believe we should have a police service at all. So I want to be clear. The Conservative Party is the party of law and order. We are the party of law and order. We want to fund, not defund the police. And the reason why we want to triple stop and search and hire 10,000 more police officers is because we believe that this will lead to safer streets. I'm afraid it doesn't matter if more black boys are searched because it will mean more black lives are saved. The police's own guidance now explicitly says that people should be treated differently because of protected characteristics. Equality under the law, this guiding principle on which our great nation was built, is being thrown away. Some will ask, why didn't you do anything in government? I did, and I paid a price for it. I challenged the idea that every disparity is racism. I stopped terrible guidance and legislation asking us to treat COVID as a racist disease. I backed work showing that white working-class boys were among the most disadvantaged children in Britain, if not the most disadvantaged. That did not fit the institutional racism story, so I was attacked for it. But I didn't back down, because if the facts embarrass your ideology, the problem is your ideology, not the facts. I remember being called all sorts of names. I was called a coconut, an Uncle Tom, the black face of white supremacy. not just by activists and silly academics, but even by Labour MPs, people who should have known better. And that is why today I am not bothered by Reform MPs promoting fake adverts quoting me out of context. Nobody believes their lies, not even Nigel Farage, who praised me for my stance at the time. I met police chiefs, the Met, police and crime commissioners, and the College of Policing. I told them plainly, race action plans born out of Black Lives Matter would create the very mistrust they wanted to solve. I warned at the time that there would be a backlash. I published the evidence, I issued guidance, I wrote to public bodies again and again, telling them the same thing. Equality means treating people as individuals, not sorting them into groups. I did everything within my power, but the Equalities Minister can only warn. She has no power to command every police force, NHS trust, school or council in the country. Some listened, others simply stalled, waiting for someone else, perhaps a Labour government or another minister, who would indulge this ideology. The police pointed to the Macpherson report when I spoke to them, and they told me that I was wrong, that disparities in outcomes proved they must be institutionally racist. This was the police telling me that. But I didn't back down then, and I'm not going to back down now. I have spent my political career fighting against identity politics on the left when it came from Labour, Lib Dems, the SNP, and I will do exactly the same against identity politics when it comes from Reform UK. The answer to Black Lives Matter is not a White Lives Matter born of the same racial grievance. We will not defeat identity politics by building a mirror image of it. There is a silent majority across our country who want order, fairness, common sense, and one law for everyone. Everyone matters. These are the people the Conservative Party stands for, and that is the country we can be again. And this isn't about replacing one bureaucracy with another. I hate bureaucracy. The Conservative Party's answer to this problem rests on three principles that distinguish us from every other party. The first is universalism. That means every citizen must be treated as an individual, not as part of a group. The second is that differences in outcome are not proof of discrimination. Just because men and women or the young and old have differences doesn't mean these are problems of ageism or sexism. We need to examine the facts and the evidence before ideology. If you diagnose everything as racism or sexism or ageism, you won't solve the underlying issue. The third principle is that we rebuild trust in failing institutions, not undermine them. We must find the root cause of failure and tackle it rather than destroying trust for political or other gain. Conservatives believe in our institutions. Institutions are not perfect, but we want to fix a broken system, not smash it to pieces because we are angry. And don't get me wrong, we are angry. I am angry. But rage is not a strategy. Rage is not a solution. In March, I gave a speech about separatism and how we need to remove identity politics from public life. I asked the respected barrister Andrew Dinsmore to advise me on how we do this and how we bring back the principle of meritocracy and equality under the law. This is the solution. There are so many problems to fix. Many of them are currently being caused by the public sector equality duty in the Equality Act. This duty is subjective, with no clear rules, and whatever its intention, in practice, it has become a minefield that exposes almost every significant public decision to legal challenge. It is astonishing that late last year, the government lost a case in the High Court against a group of dangerous prisoners. These were prisoners convicted of Islamic terrorism. They were separated from other prisoners to stop them spreading their ideology. But a court found that prison officers had breached their duty because this separation was disproportionately affecting Muslims. This is crazy. These terrorists could now be eligible for compensation. This is madness. This duty is compromising security decisions like isolating dangerous criminals in case the terrorists call us racist. Far from equal outcomes, this duty is leading to ludicrous outcomes. Like Norfolk Police telling a job applicant that because of her gender-critical views, i.e. biological sex is real, that she would not be suitable. The public sector equality duty has turned equality into a zero-sum game, where some groups are preferred over others. And the more public bodies chase equality of outcome, the further they move from equal treatment and equality under the law. That's why I can announce today that a Conservative government will repeal the public sector equality duty in its entirety. We do not need to replace the duty. We need to explain to people that they should do their jobs. I was elected leader of the Conservative Party because I promised to unravel the Blairite legal settlement. There are many laws which were brought in with good intentions, but are delivering perverse outcomes and unintended consequences. We are making policy changes now carefully and thoughtfully, as proved by the serious piece of work that has been done by Andrew Dinsmore. I don't want this to be a party political issue. I would very much like this to be a cross-party issue. This is not a left or right-wing problem. It is a common sense problem. But currently, we are the only party that recognizes what the issue is. Labour are not yet sure anything is wrong. And Reform, who are talking about White Lives Matter, announced that they would abolish the entire Equality Act. So let me be clear. That would mean that it would be legal to discriminate against white people. Is that really what they want? They're not doing their homework. What Reform don't understand is that anti-discrimination legislation protects us all, because it is race and sex that are protected, not being black or white, male or female. The Equality Act protects a white man as much as a black woman, but the public sector equality duty does not. That's why we are going to overhaul the Act, starting by removing this duty. This is not just a technical change to the law. This is part of our plan to remove identity politics entirely from the public sector. Hopefully, the private sector will follow suit because they have this problem too, but government should get its own house in order first. So let me conclude with a story from when I was local government minister back in 2021. Some councils spend up to 70% of their funding on social care, a burden which was crushing many of them. I wanted to allocate more money to councils who had greater social care responsibilities. But my officials told me that because of the public sector equality duty, we would be sued, because the policy would disproportionately benefit white, elderly Christian people. I told them that I was happy to be sued, because any ounce of common sense would tell you that the majority of people in Britain needing social care are white, elderly Christian people. This isn't just about our public institutions. It is about our culture and who we are as a country. For years, people have been encouraged to see themselves as part of an identity group rather than one culture and one nation. Britain must reject tribal politics from both left and right. The Conservatives are not choosing one identity group over another. We are saying government must look after everybody. And we must fix this for the sake of our children. Otherwise, we will leave them a more dangerous and more divided world. It is not fair on black or white children to grow up unable to trust the police. If we want Henry Novak's tragic death to have a positive legacy, it must be a country brought together rather than one pulled apart, and for trust in our police and public services to be rebuilt. That will only happen when we take ideology out of these institutions, restore equal treatment, and give good public servants the confidence to use common sense. Britain must be brought back to the principle that protects us all. Equality under the law, one rulebook, one standard, and only one public duty: to serve the country equally. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you. Next, I'm going to take some questions from the media, and then I will take questions. I'll sit down for an conversation with Anna. Yes.
I've got some questions for you first, I think.
Oh, you want to ask me questions
yes,
first?
Please.
Well, if the media will be very patient, because I know that you have lots of things that you want to ask me, but we will start with Hannah's questions, and then I will come back here and do the questions with the media.
Great. Thank you. And I want to start by associating the Institute with the remarks you made about the Henry Novak case and the importance of respecting the wishes of his family at this very difficult time for them. I would ask you about the difference this change will make for people. 1 in 10 people waited more than 12 hours for care in A&E last year. The median wait for elective care is more than double what it was in 2010 when the Conservatives came to power. The average time it takes for the police to charge an offence has tripled from 2 to 6 weeks in the last 10 years. So how will scrapping the public sector equality duty help improve those problems?
It will stop public officials from wasting their time on a lot of things that have nothing to do with delivering frontline services. That's how.
But I think you would accept, would you not, that the amount of time and money spent on EDI initiatives is in relative terms very small. For example, total police spending in 25-26 was just under £21 billion, and so you would be only freeing up less than 0.5% of that budget by stopping spending the money.
So it's quite important that we don't allow this to be just paperwork. The second, third, fourth order consequences of the way that people are carrying out their jobs is wasting a lot of time and money. We've estimated that it's about £420 million. But that's just on the public activity. How much have the Nottingham murders cost us? How much have the Southport murders cost us? Because they don't count the consequences as, in that way. If you look at the actions and the loss of trust, this is costing us billions. We need to get people focused on delivering their core functions. I've just given you an example of how even the social care funding formula was something that was questioned. I was the Equalities Minister at the time. Most people would just have backed down and said, well, that's what we're supposed to do. Even the officials don't know how to carry out their duty. It's not just that we're hiring lots of people to do this and carry out equality impacts assessments. They are spending a lot of time not focused on the job. HS2 has cost more money because of these, the public sector equality duty. It's not just policing, and the private sector looks at the public sector and copies. We will save a lot, but there is no price that I'm going to put on rebuilding trust.
So the protection from direct and indirect discrimination, which is provided by the Equality Act, which you say we should rely on, is retroactive, isn't it? So whereas the public sector equality duty puts a requirement on public authorities to consider individuals' differences in advance, and is specifically about working towards equality of opportunity rather than outcomes. So if you remove the public sector equality duty, don't you risk disadvantaging the most vulnerable people who will find it hardest to use the Equality Act to challenge instances of discrimination, because you remove the incentive for public services to think about their needs in advance, because they aren't the ones who are going to challenge?
No, I completely disagree. The Equality Act should be a shield protecting people from discrimination, not a sword for people to look for the opportunities to create.
But that doesn't rely on people being able to use that shield.
Yes, but the shield is there. The public sector equality duty is not the shield. It's doing something completely different. The Equality Act has Section 18, I can't remember which one specifically. Section 18, for example, protects pregnancy and goes into a lot of detail about that. I heard Liz Kendall this morning saying that if we got rid of the public sector equality duty, then pregnant women wouldn't be protected. This is nonsense. That's not how it works. And the fact that I, as Equalities Minister, was constantly having to explain to people what the duty meant and how they should go about it, was a waste of my time. It was not just a waste of my time. It shows that everybody is getting it wrong. I have trust in people. I don't believe the public service is full of lots of racists and people who don't care about disability. And unless they're giving this box to tick, they're not going to do that. I don't believe that. And we should stop enshrining that belief. It is making, and I say this listening to other ethnic minorities, especially young people, it makes them feel that every white person is racist and it's only the law that is protecting them. That is not what our country is. We need to change the culture. We need to sweep all of this stuff away. It is not getting better. The law of diminishing returns is applying to these regulations. We need to get back to the core function of public services, frontline delivery.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. You can see I'm very exercised about this. I am the country's longest serving equalities minister. So there is a lot that I've seen and a lot that needs to change. But now I'm happy to take questions from the media. Cardin from ITV.
Thank you very much. I suppose people who support some of these measures would argue that in order to treat people equally, you have to be able to take account of their differences. And that means not treating them in exactly the same way, because you have to take account of disabilities, levels of understanding, and perhaps in some cases the degree to which they have trust in the public authorities that are dealing with them. Aren't you removing the requirement to take account of people's differences?
No, not at all. In fact, we're making it easier and better, because what we're bringing back is common sense. The public sector equality duty has put rapists in women's prisons. That is not common sense. You don't need a duty to tell you to take account of differences. Quite often, differences are obvious. We don't need the protected characteristic of age and the public sector equality duty to tell us not to treat children in the same way that we treat adults. What is happening is that people have stopped thinking and are just trying to follow the process so they don't get into trouble. I want people to bring their judgment back. If you don't have good judgment, you shouldn't be in the job. If you need a box to tell you not to put a rapist in a woman's prison, or actually the box is telling you to do that, then something has gone horribly wrong. So what I am bringing back is common sense. Next question, Ali Fortescue from Sky News.
Hiya. Ali Fortescue from Sky News. Can I just be really clear on the point of principle here? Do you accept the principle that some people do need to be treated differently, some people from different groups need to be treated differently for there to be fairness? Can I just get a yes or no on that? And can I also ask, you're someone who previously talked about becoming working class after working at McDonald's. You just then said that we need to treat people as individuals, not part of a group. How far do you take that? Does that include language and labels around class?
Right, okay. So the first question is, do I believe that people need to be treated differently in certain circumstances? Yes, but the principle remains the same, that equality under the law. One of the things that I try to explain is that we are not creating a hierarchy of groups. A black man and a white woman are equally cared for by the Equality Act. It's the public sector duty that asks people to start making various adjustments. Common sense can fix this. Of course, there are incidents of racism, but you don't need to ask the police to accept as a fact anyone saying this is racist, irrespective of what is in front of them, irrespective of the circumstances, because you wouldn't do that if it was if the individuals were different. That's what I'm saying. Let's bring equal treatment back. Of course, if someone has cancer, we're not going to treat them in a hospital like someone who doesn't have cancer. But you don't need the Equality Act to tell you these things. This is what I'm saying, that we have retreated into such a place that we don't even have the confidence to apply things that are obvious. And on the point of labels, as it stands, the Act does not have class as a protected characteristic. But I actually published a report, as I said in the speech, that talked about how white working class boys were disadvantaged. You don't need laws to tell you to think about these things. You should just know. We should just know. Alex Forsyth from the BBC.
Thank you very much. You've just said you don't need to think about this stuff, you should just know. What would you say to the people that are listening to you today and think, if you don't put this duty on public bodies to actively think about it, what you might be doing is damaging the cause of people who have faced discrimination for decades. And can I ask, when you were in government, did you suggest this should be scrapped?
So I would say to those people that the Equality Act protects your rights, but we need to make sure that we do not create a society where people retreat into groups. We are seeing separatism in our country occur because different people are being treated differently. And when you have that, there will be a backlash. I made this comment to people who were promoting the Black Lives Matter movement, that if you keep saying this, you're going to get other people who say, well, I want to talk about white lives. And now we have both. That hasn't brought anybody together. So I'm not saying that there is a perfect solution. I am saying that this is the best way for us to remove discrimination from the law while still protecting equality under the law. And that is something that I will continue to fight for. No, I did not ask to remove the PSED. I kept trying to explain to people how to make sure they complied with the law in the Equality Act. And after writing thousands of letters, I've decided that people just need to have this public sector equality duty removed, because when I tried to get them to think more carefully and sensibly about it, they ignored it. So now we're just going to get rid of it, and that should fix the problem. Catherine Forster, GB News.
Thank you. So much focus rightly on the appalling death of Henry Novak, but the Nottingham inquiry concluded yesterday with the message that they had been failed at all levels. But we do know that one of the psychiatrists had resisted sectioning Caine because she was worried about the overrepresentation of black men with schizophrenia in institutions. What's your message to people who feel queasy about what you are suggesting, given some of those facts? And also, if I may, what is your response to the horrific attempted murder yesterday in Belfast, the police saying that a Somalian man in his 30s now under arrest for attempted murder? Thank you.
Thank you. So on the Nottingham murders, what I would say is that this is exactly the sort of situation that we're trying to prevent. If you have mental health issues and you need to be sectioned and you need to be detained, you should be sectioned, you should be detained. No one should be counting how many other black people have been sectioned or detained and say, well, this is too much, so we'll let you go. That is a complete absence of common sense. And we need to bring the common sense back. This is what I am pushing for. We know that there will be some cases where people are discriminated against. There are powers in the Equality Act to deal with that, whether you're white or black. Let's use those, but not this duty that basically tells people to ignore things that need to be dealt with. On Belfast, I've seen some grainy images. Again, I'm absolutely horrified. It is a horrific incident. I haven't heard anything about who the attacker might have been, but I think a lot of people will start wondering yet again, is this someone who should not have been in our country? Have there been failings around our borders? I would urge the police to bring the facts out as quickly as possible so that we can get some clarity. But it is yet another reminder that we do need stronger borders. This is why it is concerted policy to leave the Convention on Human Rights. That's why we have a borders bill. It's been 2 years. The Prime Minister has not smashed any gangs or stopped any boats. This is a problem. I don't know if that person was someone who came in via that route, but today I'm talking about rebuilding trust with the public and their trust in public institutions. One of the ways that we are failing the public is by making them think that we have not got a grip on crime, on borders, on managing dangerous and difficult people in our society. And we need to show them that we get it and that we can solve these things quickly so that lives are saved and crimes are prevented. Andy Bell, Channel 5.
Thank you very much, Andy Bell, 5 News. In a society where inequality of outcomes is at least a fact, isn't the duty that you're scrapping, couldn't that be a mechanism to improve that, and you're simply giving that up?
No, because the duty is already creating inequality of outcomes. It's already creating inequality of outcomes, and it is also destroying trust in institutions. I have lived in 3 continents. I lived in one where nobody trusted the institutions at all. It's very, very horrible. You need people to be able to understand that if you go to the police, they're going to do the same thing, whether you're a black person or a white person. They're going to do the same thing whether you're old or young, gay or straight. That's what we need. Of course, there will be circumstances around your identity that should be taken into account. But you don't need the police or the NHS to have it written to such an extent, as we saw in the case of Henry Novak, where an accusation, a mere accusation of racism, was taken more seriously than Henry saying that he had been stabbed. That cannot be right. Jason Groves, Daily Mail.
Thank you. A couple of things. Is this on the Equality Act, or there are other aspects of it that you've got in your sights? And with the situation at the moment, do you think the police can be trusted to deal properly with racially charged incidents?
So the answer to that question is yes. I do think that most frontline police officers are good people. I think a lot of the issues have actually been with the senior police chiefs. They were the ones who I spoke to, and they were the ones who told me, Kemi, you don't understand, we really are institutionally racist, and then could not explain exactly how they were. I feel for a lot of frontline police officers, even the ones in the Novak case who made some very serious mistakes, which need to be investigated and looked at. We need accountability. But when I look at police officers like Martin Blake, who was doing his job and then ended up being dragged through long public inquiries and exonerated. When I see police officers who say that they're not going to carry arms, the armed police officers, because they're worried about their lives and careers being ruined for doing what they know that they need to do, I worry. We need to look after the police as well. I'm very concerned about police welfare. So this is not an anti-police speech. It's actually pro-police, because I want to free them to be able to do their jobs without worrying about box ticking or compliance on issues that are not core to the function of saving lives and catching criminals. There will be more coming. I announced a Culture and Integration Commission. This is one of the pieces of work that has come out of it. I've been looking at this for years, and there is a lot that needs to be done. I think that we are at risk of separating. We look at Wales, Northern Ireland, Scotland. They're all run by parties that want to break up the United Kingdom. So this isn't just about the Equality Act. This is about lawfare. And when I was elected leader of the Conservative Party, I said that we are going to unpick all of the lawfare that has grown and is stopping us from looking after patients, to catching criminals, to even getting houses built. We need to fix a whole bunch of things, but we also need to make sure that we promote British culture and one shared British identity. Ben Clatworthy, The Times.
Thank you. Kemi, you say that more black boys should be searched if it means more black lives will be saved. But is there not a risk that that will inflame tensions from a group who already feel that they're subject to more stop and search? And do you believe that, therefore, there should be quotas?
No, I don't believe in quotas. I never have, and I never will. But there will be, as I said at the beginning of the speech, some people who will feel uncomfortable. But the truth is that when black boys are searched more knives are found. The incidence of knife carrying is higher. So we can't leave people to carry knives because we think that we've searched enough people for today, because that means someone else's life gets lost. And the people who tell me more than anyone that they want stop and search are the mothers of young black boys who have been killed by their peers. They are killing each other. They're not going to look for people from other communities to kill. The carrying of knife crime harms the knife carrier's community before it harms all others. I want to save those lives. I want to save the people who are most at risk, whatever their background. And if that means doing some tough stuff, then I'm going to do some tough stuff. I'm not going to run away from an outcry and allow other people's children to be killed just so I can have a quiet life. That is not fair. Martina Betts from The Sun, please.
Thank you very much. Martina Betts from The Sun. Earlier this morning, you said that the National Black Police Association shouldn't exist. do you think that all staff networks based on race, gender, sexuality in public service should be abolished, and why is that? And just quickly, you spoke a lot about restoring common sense. Sir Sadiq Khan blocked a deal with Palantir and the Met Police because he said that the company did not share the city's values. Is that an example of how ideology is basically being prioritized over getting results? Thank you.
On the Palantir question, yes, absolutely. All we should care about is how many lives are we saving in the NHS, not whether Palantir agrees with Sadiq Khan. Sadiq Khan has a lot of values that I don't share, and many other Londoners don't share. I think he should be focused on doing his job. And on the issue of identity groups, particularly in the public sector, I didn't say that they shouldn't exist. I don't like them, but I want to be very clear what the principle is. I believe in freedom of association. And if you are black police officers and you want to hang out together and go to the pub or play tennis, that's fine. But should you organize within the police and start changing policy on the basis of your race? No. And the way I know that that is not the right answer is because if you swapped the races and if you had the White Police Officers Association and said that they should start making policy for white people in the police, I think everyone would be up in arms. Certainly the usual suspects would be up in arms. We need to treat these groups differently. I don't think that we should stop people from wanting to hang out with other women and so on. I've been someone who believes very much in freedom of association. But the public sector is paid for by taxpayers. It's paid for by everyone. They should be serving everyone, not splitting themselves into groups. And that is why I don't think those identity networks in the civil service or the police should have any say in public policy or how those organizations are run. Only the people which politicians appoint to those bodies should be doing that. So I've still got a few more people. I've got David Williamson, Nick Guttridge, Noah Hoffman, Amelia Casalecchio, and Ben Quinn. So David Williamson, please.
Thanks so very much. Incredibly, we're almost 10 years away from the moment when Theresa May made her speech about burning injustices. And she said then, if you're black, you're treated more harshly by the criminal justice system than if you're white. Do you think those injustices have been tackled, or rather, we've seen such a decline in the criminal justice system that simply people from all backgrounds are now suffering injustices? And just on another note, the acting legend that's Idris Elba has said of James Bond, let's not try and make it woke, and suggested that some markets might not prefer a non-traditional Bond. Would you like to see someone from a different background playing 007?
So I agree with Idris Elba that we should not make James Bond woke, because that will ruin the entire franchise. But it is for the writers and the people who own the rights to make that decision, and then the public will deliver their verdict in terms of ticket sales. That's the way, I believe in capitalism. That's the way that it should work. On your question about Theresa May, I wish she had spoken to me about this at the time, because I think I might have framed some of what she said differently. I do believe that everyone suffers injustice. It doesn't matter the color of your skin. I do think that if you are an ethnic minority or any kind of minority, it is the fact of being in a minority that means that you are probably more likely to experience something that the majority group does not, whatever minority you are. That is a fact. That is why we have an Equality Act. That is why those laws are there, to prevent discrimination. But when you have public bodies then going beyond preventing discrimination to achieve outcomes and try and do something different and accept any mention of racism as true without examining the facts, that is a problem. And what I'm doing is changing the Conservative Party so that we start with the principles first, rather than start with the intention first. The principles are equality under the law. Disparities and differences in outcome are not necessarily racism. They might be, but if you jump to racism or whatever ism as the first rather than the last reason, you tend to actually create more problems. And the third is that when an institution has failed, let's not try and pull it down and destroy it. It's very hard to build institutions. Try and bring trust back by fixing those institutions. Those are the principles which we are starting with now. And when people understand that, they will understand why we have the policy, not just the policy in isolation. Nick Guttridge, Daily Telegraph.
Great, thank you. Could I ask on a slightly different one? We've reported on a government report this morning which shows that between 2015 and 2021, almost £30 billion of taxpayers' money went to Britain's enemies. This was COVID support and foreign aid predominantly, and those enemies were people like Islamic State, Russia, companies linked to the Chinese military. As taxes and state spending continue to go up and up, does it show there's a bit of a danger that ministers and officials are too naive about how taxpayers' money is being spent and where it is ending up? And should we be more wary in future of these sort of large grants programs?
I think we should always be wary of large grants programs and large spending. We are spending far too much as a country, and we're not making as much money as we used to. We're becoming less wealthy. So we do need to tackle that. But this is actually related. It's not a different issue. It is related to what I'm talking about. I was in the Treasury as a junior minister when we were implementing the policy. I didn't own that policy area, but I had to answer a lot of questions in Parliament. I was asking about fraud in the department. The questions in Parliament were not about fraud. They were asking why, how many women were getting these bounce-back loans, how many ethnic minorities were getting the bounce-back loans, why have black people been left out. The focus of our politicians as well has been in the wrong area. And perhaps if more people had been asking questions around probity and fraud and checks and balances, we wouldn't have had the appalling situation which you've just described. This issue, going back to Hannah's question, this issue is not just about how much money we spend on paperwork. With the amount of time that we are spending thinking about these things means that other real big issues are being neglected. And I want us to get back to core functions. Thank you. Noah Hoffman, Spectator.
Thank you. I know you don't like to encroach too much on the private sector, but on principle, what is your view on schemes, job schemes where only certain groups can apply, whether that's based on race or class, etc.? And very quickly, just off the back of the Theresa May comment, can you guarantee to the room and people watching that the entire Tory party, every MP, currently in the party is with you on this policy and on this position on identity politics? Right.
So, so I've forgotten the first half of your question.
Just like grad schemes where you have to be so-and-so to apply.
They are illegal. They are illegal. You're not allowed to discriminate. Positive discrimination is illegal. But positive action, where perhaps you might just want to encourage more people from various backgrounds to apply, is not. But that doesn't mean that you should hire someone because of their skin color. That is illegal. And this is one of the things which I was trying to explain, that many people don't understand the difference between positive action and positive discrimination. It is another area that we are looking at. But actually hiring people on the basis of skin color, even if you mean well, is illegal in the private sector. There are loads of companies that have been taken to tribunals, often by white people who have been discriminated against, rightly, and they've had to pay a lot of money to compensate. And this is why I say we're not getting rid of the Equality Act like Reform wants to. I don't even know what their policy is. They change it every 5 minutes. But they've now said they're abolishing the Equality Act. If they abolish the Equality Act, then it will become legal to discriminate against people, white or black. That's why we're not doing it. On the second question about whether the party agrees with me, the party knows where I stand on this issue. Today is not the first day that I've been talking about this, and I have said which direction we're going. It's this or nothing. I've said that we're signing a contract about the agenda we're taking into government, because I want everybody to understand what it is we're going to deliver. If there is a Conservative MP who does not believe in equality under the law or wants different treatment for different groups on the basis of skin color or protected characteristics, then they probably are not a Conservative MP. So they're probably something else. I believe that everyone in my party is with me, and if they're not with me now, then they will not be with me at the next election. Emilio Castellaccio, if I'm saying that right.
Probably. Yeah, don't worry. Thank you very much. You talked about how the Henry Novak case shouldn't be politicised. What are your thoughts about the way that Elon Musk has been going about talking about it, and the way that the debate has generally been fueled on Twitter? And similarly, what did you think about the intervention from the US Vice President on it last week?
So I think that, Twitter is a terrible place for having a civilized conversation. We all have to use it, politicians and journalists in particular. The parents have asked for it not to be politicized. Some people will. I've seen people even criticize the parents, saying it's not about you, it's about the rest of us. That's completely wrong. I disagree with the US Vice President's remarks, and I told him so, actually. We need to stop jumping to the conclusion that verifies the beliefs that we already had. And even I, someone with very strong beliefs, I do challenge myself. I don't immediately assume that what I think must be the reason. We talked about the Belfast case. I have my suspicions, but let's wait until the facts come out. That's how you don't politicize, and actually trying to work together. I'm not blaming any particular party for this. I think that we just need to change the culture across the board, and we should be able to work cross-party on this issue. Common sense is not a left or a right-wing thing. And finally, Ben Quinn from The Guardian.
Thank you. Can I just pick up on Martina's question? And you were very clear you believe in freedom of association. Should public bodies continue to afford staff networks time off to organise and even use their property for that type of organisation? And secondly, if I may, you've raised the prospect of a civil war potentially happening at some stage in the UK in the future. What would you say to someone going about their business on the lovely streets of Saffron Walden this morning who's worried about that? What will the civil war look like if we don't head it off?
Okay, so starting with staff networks, I think that they should not be given time off to carry out these activities. My experience of staff networks in the civil service was that they were actually a way for some people to create a clique or a cabal who were then furthering their own personal careers at the expense of other civil servants. And the staff networks ended up being bad for some of their colleagues. I even saw, in some cases, bullying of other people who didn't share their views. So staff networks should not be anything more than social organizations. People can go to the pub or play sports or do other things outside work time. We are not, as taxpayers, paying civil servants to deal with their own self-actualization and sorting out their personal hobby horses. So I don't like them. I think they're very problematic. I think the senior civil service have not just failed to get a grip, they've actually encouraged it because it was a way of ticking boxes. And there are many good civil servants, many good civil servants who don't like this, but no one speaks for them. I am speaking for them now. And the Civil War comments you refer to were in an interview, much longer interview that I gave to the BBC. And the point I'm trying to make is not that we're on the cusp of a civil war, no, far from it, but that you sow seeds which end up sprouting very further along in the future, much further along, if you're not paying attention to what you're doing. And when you look at countries that have had civil wars, it is almost always, around identity. I grew up, my childhood was spent in a country where everybody looked like me. And people still found differences because there were 300 different ethnic groups, people spoke different languages, they had very different cultures that are probably imperceptible to those who were not living in that country. That's what I'm talking about, that we have to make sure that we are not doing things that seem nice or fun or easy now and creating bigger problems for our children tomorrow. I think about my children when I think about these policies. They are half black and half white, and I want them to feel that they can be both, that they don't need to choose, that no one is going to be judging them because they look like their mother or their father, but they'll be judging them as individuals. And that is a principle that I think all of us, whatever our political views, must share.
Can I just say thank you to everyone for joining us, and the recording of this event will be on our website shortly, so you can watch it back. But do join me in thanking Kemi one more time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And it does sound concerning that that decision has been taken. I would urge all councils to work with their local ICBs and other parts of the NHS system to make sure that that healthcare is provided in local areas where people can access it as part of our plan to make sure that healthcare is available right across the country.
David Reid.
Question number 7, Mr. Speaker.
So to stay.
Mr. Speaker, too many men live too much of their lives in poor health and face barriers to accessing health services. That is why we have published England's first ever men's health strategy to get men speaking about their physical and mental health, and we're getting on with implementing it. From partnering with the Premier League to investing in the Men's Health Community Fund, we are meeting men where they are and supporting them to live longer, healthier lives.
David Reid.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The NHS itself says that prostate cancer often has no symptoms at first. Prostate Cancer UK says most men with early prostate cancer have no symptoms at all. Now, the government's own Transform trial exists because current detection methods are recognised as inadequate. So why does government messaging still point men towards early symptoms they are unlikely to have, while cancers that could be cured are becoming cancers that cannot?
Mr. Speaker, let me be really clear in my advice to any man who is worried about prostate cancer, whether he has symptoms or not. Go to your GP, discuss it with your GP. Testing is available when people's GP recommend it, and I would recommend no man to worry about it in silence, to sit at home and fret about what might be going on. Go to your GP and discuss it. With regards to the wider screening programme that we've agreed to do as a government, the targeted screening programme, that is based on the evidence of weighing up the benefits of screening versus the harm that it can cause. Because we know that at the moment, if you identify cancerous cells, Mr. Speaker, and have treatment, for example, by removal of the prostate, in 20% of cases that leads to permanent urinary incontinence and in 2/3 permanent erectile dysfunction.
Steve Darling.
Number 8, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With permission, I'll take questions 8 and 20 together. We inherited a decades-old system where patient voice was divorced from decision makers, with over 20 organisations offering a place for patients and users to share feedback. The Health Bill will put the views of patients and users at the heart of decision-making, ensure it directly informs those responsible for commissioning locally, and we'll create a new Patient Experience Directorate in the department to ensure patient and user insight directly shapes national policy making.
Steve Darling.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The abolition of Health Watch will see the NHS and the government effectively marking their own homework. Can the Minister please give some assurances how the government will ensure that the voice is heard from those with learning disabilities, complex needs and dementia?
Yeah. He makes an important point about the variety of needs that local commissioners need to take account of, and that is exactly what the Health Bill will try to do, not by outsourcing that role to an outside body, but putting those views at the heart of what all commissioners to do, which includes making sure underrepresented or normally often unheard voices do have that exact voice.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. When Boots decided to close 2 pharmacies in Hampton, leaving a large number of elderly and vulnerable residents without local pharmacy provision, Healthwatch Richmond played a crucial role in ensuring we got a new community pharmacy in that area. That locally led patient voice can't be replaced by officials in Whitehall or our local ICB that's about to suffer over 50% cuts in its operating budget. So will she think again if she's really serious about championing patients?
Again, she raises an interesting example of somewhere where the local commissioners have failed to provide a service or recognise when a service disappears. They can do that through using very different voices rather than outsourcing that responsibility. We have to make sure, as we go forward in this bill, that commissioners do their job properly, which includes patient voice at that very local level.
Jill Muskell.
Replacing Healthwatch will mean that ultimately patients will not have confidence in the commissioners. We've just heard one example, and I can offer many examples in York where York Healthwatch, which is phenomenal, led by Sean Balsam, has led reports which has brought about change. So I do plead with the government to review clauses 64 and 65 of the Health Bill to maintain Healthwatch. It should not be either or. It needs to be commissioners engaging with the patient voice, but also Healthwatch having that independence to advocate advocate for patients.
I thank her for her comments and her comments about her local health watch. And there are certainly examples where this does work well in local communities, and we need to understand those. But it doesn't work well everywhere, and it does mean that local commissioners are not then empowered and indeed held accountable for their job of making sure that that voice and experience is held locally. There is also nothing to stop ICBs undertaking that role differently as they see fit in their local communities in the future, rather than dictating how they should do it through one particular body.
The Brash.
While I support the government's desire to drive out bureaucracy from the NHS and simplify systems for patients, locally, Healthwatch Hartlepool has done an outstanding job in ensuring that patients' voices are heard as systems and services are improved. So what can the Minister do to ensure that that local expertise is retained in any new system?
And I thank him for his comments. And again, it's highlighted that if that works well for his local system, there is nothing to stop, and indeed the ICB's role, how they undertake that role, has to be determined locally to make it most effective for those local circumstances. And they can undertake that role as they best see fit.
Graham Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. People in Beverley and Holderness... number 11. Sorry, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Over 85% of waiting list removals are as a result of patient care. And since the end of the pandemic, unreported removals have been below pre-pandemic levels. Record levels of elect activity are being delivered by NHS staff, enabling us to cut waiting lists and meet our interim target of 65% of patients being seen within 18 weeks, the highest performance in over 4 years.
Graham Stewart.
Speaker, and I apologise for being taken by surprise. People in Beverley and Holderness want high quality and speedy care, not massaged health waiting list numbers to suit Labour narratives. And of course, Mr. Speaker, you'll remember that the last Labour government had form on this as well, when repeatedly the NAA found that the numbers were manipulated when waiting lists were similarly put on a pedestal in that way. So can the Minister, and perhaps with the new Secretary of State by her side, can she give reassurance to people in Beverley and Holderness that we are going to have genuinely improved health care rather than widespread manipulation and cleansing of waiting lists to suit political purposes?
Well, the last Labour government, if anyone's forgotten, left the NHS in the best state it had been with record government. And that is not in dispute. That is not in dispute in terms of waiting list targets or indeed of patient satisfaction. He might want to relook at that record. This point that the Conservatives seem to be intent on following up forever is an important one. 85% of the activity is as a result of direct patient care. Validation, both clinical and clerical validation, is long-standing routine practice of waiting list management. It is no different now at roughly 15%, slightly higher before the pandemic, than it has been before. So it is just not the case that there is something different going on here. What we are doing is making sure that patients, his local constituents, and I appreciate in his system there are many other local problems going on at the moment, they can be clear that people on the list are the right people on the right list for the right care in the right place by the right clinician, and that is what we're determined to do.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I commend the Minister for her work in reducing waiting lists for GP referral to first treatment, and they are genuinely coming down. She will be aware, however, that that statistic doesn't capture the entire picture, particularly for people who then require subsequent follow-up care. For example, women with endometriosis or women waiting for breast reconstruction following breast mastectomies. Could you say a little bit about any plans she has to capture those waiting lists?
I thank him for his question, and of course he is someone who does understand the way in which waiting lists are managed and so on. We don't have any plans to add any particular new targets to those that we have already committed to give confidence to the British public that we can fix the NHS and get those waiting lists down. But he raises an important point about how we support patients understanding where they are in the system and where their care will be provided. That is part of our commitment in the elective reform plan that we outlined last year, that patients are kept up to date about where they're being treated, why they are being referred on to perhaps a more local service, and we will continue to try and do that.
Gentleman, Dr. Luca.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And last month, the Health Service Journal reported that elective waiting list target was met largely largely because a record number of patients were removed from waiting lists in March without receiving treatment. So can the Minister tell the House how many patients were removed in March, what happened to them, and whether she is satisfied they definitely didn't need treatment?
Yeah. Well, again, as I said earlier, I'm still a bit perplexed as to why the Conservatives are perpetually highlighting their inadequate management of the health service and the idea that patients are simply referred to a waiting list and then left there for a couple of years, which is what happened under their watch. It is important that patients know why they're on a waiting list and that obviously they get the best clinical care in as quickly as possible. I don't have to my hand the exact figure in March. That will obviously be published as part of the normal process when we publish the waiting list targets. I can tell him that completed pathways were 5.9% higher in the 21 months from July 24, when we took office, to March 2025 than the previous 21 months. Patients are getting the right care in the right place that they deserve under this government.
Good chances.
Question number 12, please, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, it's not just the Conservatives raising this, it's patients and the Health Service Journal. And the answer is 350,000 people. That's a city the size of Coventry, wiped off the waiting list with no treatment. And it's 100,000 more than the month before. So if there's generally nothing to hide, the government shouldn't worry about pushing these figures out. So will the Minister commit to a review to find out what's happened to these 350,000 patients? Or does she believe that waiting lists should be met by removing patients from the figures rather than actually treating them?
This is an established way of managing waiting lists and waiting times. We are making sure that there is adequate clerical and clinical validation of the list and that patients are treated where they need to be, closer to home and often in more local circumstances. Of course, we have committed to greater transparency than was had under the previous government. We continue to do that. Obviously, if there is something that comes through that, I'm very happy to the exact question I didn't quite follow from the honourable gentleman. We are confident in the data that is coming forward. As I said, this is standard practice. It is roughly about 15%, as it has been over many, many years.
Good charters.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Number 12, please.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Health visitors play a vital role in supporting babies, children and families. Under the previous government, the number of health visitors fell significantly, which is why this government has taken action. The upcoming professional strategy for nursing and midwifery will set out a bold direction of travel to strengthen health visiting across England, and we have already made improvements with all post-birth health and development reviews now completed for over 80% of children nationally, the highest levels since recording began.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I recently gave evidence to Baroness Amos's National Maternity Inquiry sharing the trauma my wife and I endured. And after the birth, even as she carried her own burden, she was my rock. But the NHS was not. I was invisible, no one asked about me, and I was left to carry it alone for months. So will the Minister please ensure that health visitors recognise dads and other non-birthing partners, check in on their mental health and help them access support so that no more dads are forgotten when families need them the most?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And can I thank my honourable friend for being so brave and willing to share his and his wife's birth trauma and about the lack of support afterwards, not just with Baroness Amos and her review, but with the House today. I know personally how hard it is to do that, but I also know the huge difference it can make to government policy. I am happy to commit to him today that the government will absolutely look closely at all of the findings in Baroness Amos's review and with the National Maternity Task Force to translate the recommendations into action. I am also pleased to confirm that we have recently updated our National Health Visiting Guidance to include a high-impact area on family mental health with a clear focus on supporting both mothers and fathers.
Speaker, it's not just the number of health visitors that needs improving. Women report to me they've skipped appointments due to negative experiences with health visitors, especially around breastfeeding. Will she commit to improving the training of health visitors so that women are receiving the best quality care?
Yes, I will. We are busy working on the 10-year workforce plan, and the training of all the NHS workforce, including health visitors, is a big part of that. I am in my new position as Public Health and Prevention Minister. I am particularly interested in the work of health visitors, and especially with regard to breastfeeding and supporting rates of breastfeeding. And he will be aware that the breastfeeding survey was released, the results of that was released last week, and they did show substantial improvement.
Question 13, please, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you. This government is rebuilding England's broken NHS dentistry system. The Dental Recruitment Incentive Scheme encourages dentists to work in underserved areas. Data on the scheme's effectiveness will be published later this year. We're taking steps to increase the supply of dentists. For example, last week I was very proud to announce the first sustained expansion of dental school places since 2007. Backed by £11 million per year, a total of 50 dental school places a year have been allocated.
Mr. Smart.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My constituent John, who's from Bredbury, has been in touch because, like so many others, his local dentist is going private. And for many families in my constituency, private dentistry simply isn't an affordable option. Research by the British Dental Association found that 96% of practices are not accepting new NHS patients, and a golden hello worth £20,000 over 3 years isn't adequately compensating for a contract that loses money every day. The scheme just isn't working. It's recruited 2 dentists, 2 in the whole of Greater Manchester, neither of which is in my constituency. What more can the Minister do to make sure my constituents get the dentists they need where they need them?
Yeah. I thank her for that question, and she's absolutely right to raise the issue of the contract. The fundamental problem is that the units of dental activity system is a contractual system that does not work for NHS dentistry. That is why we had the absurd situation when we came into office in July 2024 that there was a £392 million underspend on NHS dentistry because dentists weren't incentivised. We're changing that. I've got the underspend down to 36 million. There's still a very long way to go, and we need to reform the long-term contract to incentivise dentists to do NHS dentistry.
Whereas, Mr. Speaker, access to NHS dentistry remains too difficult in rural and coastal communities like South East Cornwall, where residents face long travel times and limited provision. So would the Minister meet with me to discuss what next steps we can take to improve local access?
I thank her for that question, and she's absolutely right that there are areas of the country, as we know, that are known as dental deserts. We have to fix that. It comes back again to the fundamental issue about how to incentivise dentists to do NHS dentistry, regardless of where they are in the country. But there are particularly acute pressures in constituencies such as the one that she so brilliantly represents, and I'd be happy to meet her to discuss it further.
Question 14.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We know men are less likely to seek mental health support and suicide rates are higher in men, and we are taking action to address this. Through our men's health strategy, we've launched a partnership with the Premier League to improve mental health literacy. The Suicide Prevention Support Pathfinders programme will invest up to £3.6 million in areas where middle-aged men face the greatest risk of suicide, the North West being one area with some of the highest rates.
Mr. Speaker, and I welcome the publication of the Men's Health Strategy, especially the measures in it designed to improve mental health outcomes. In a report that I recently sent to the ministerial team following an event that I held with local charities and mental health service users, it became really clear that the recommendations of that strategy need to be implemented quickly. What practical steps are therefore being taken to implement those measures, especially in areas like mine, where deprivation continues to really affect the health of men and boys?
I warmly welcome my honourable members, my honourable friend's report, and can I thank her for all her work on behalf of their constituents. Locally, NHS and council partners are supporting delivery through services like Thrive, Thinking Ahead Talking Therapies, alongside community initiatives such as Male Health Survivors at the Dale and Andy's Man Club, Rochdale, supporting men's mental health. We also have a mental health call for evidence, which is now live until the 12th of July, seeking practical examples to tangibly improve outcomes and inform our mental health strategy. And I would be very keen to work with her on what more we can do.
Jim Farrell.
Mr. Speaker. The suicide rate amongst men in Cumbria is twice the national average. There are a whole range of reasons why that is so. One of them is clearly bound up in isolation and rurality. I wonder whether the Minister will be willing to meet with myself and the Farmer Network as we seek to deliver mental health answers to people struggling. Often, when you've got 25% of farmers on less than the poverty rate, when you've got people who are isolated, dealing with transition at times of enormous stress and anxiety with nowhere to turn, would she agree to meet with me in the Farmer Network so we can address this particular cause of this appalling tragedy in our county?
Can I thank my honourable friend for raising that really important issue? And of course, we must not overlook the needs, especially with farmers, as he raised. And our men's health strategy has invested an extra £3.6 million in suicide prevention work in the most deprived parts of England, where men face the greatest risk of suicide. And the partnering work that we're doing with the Premier Leagues together against suicide initiatives to meet men where they are on their term, so they don't suffer in silence. And I'd be really, I look forward to working with him and meeting with him to hear more about this.
Lewis Cocky.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Question 15.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, the NHS Modernisation Bill will clarify and strengthen accountability in the NHS. It ends fragmented accountability that we inherited on coming into government, and the reforms will restore clear democratic accountability with the Secretary of State directly accountable to Parliament and the public, and we will enhance local autonomy, ensuring NHS organisations are good partners and deliver for their local populations.
Lewis Cocky.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We need more local accountability in the NHS. In Broxbourne, we've seen thousands of new houses built, but when I and local Conservative councillors have pushed for new healthcare facilities to cope with the new demand, we have been refused. Can the Minister explain, under their new system, who will be accountable for that?
He highlights a situation familiar to many of us, one of the many problems that we inherited from the last government with this fragmented landscape. So I thank him for his question. And the ICB, clearly responsible for commissioning for their population to improve access to healthcare and reduce inequalities. That's absolutely a key part of their responsibility. And they will be held accountable through the outcomes framework. It's the first time ICBs will be held accountable through that process.
Alan Dolan.
Mr. Speaker, Jules Fielder from Hastings was diagnosed with stage 4 terminal lung cancer after doctors missed her symptoms, mistaking them for tennis elbow. As a non-smoking young woman, she was not meeting the stereotype of what lung cancer patients often present with, but she was determined to channel her own tragedy into change. She campaigned for better, earlier awareness among clinicians and members of the public of symptoms, and she took this message to everyone she could. Together, we convinced Boots to roll out on-shelf awareness labels in the cold and flu medicine section to raise better awareness. And sadly, Jules passed away last month. Will the Minister join me in paying tribute to all of Jules's campaigning and commit to continuing her vision in the Department of Health of making sure we use every possible avenue to raise better awareness and catch cancer earlier?
Well, I thank her for raising that example of tremendous public service in the face of the adversity, and obviously we are sorry to hear of Jules passing, and our thoughts are with her friends and family. But she does highlight the way in which people can access and determine outcomes, and it is the responsibility of those working in local health services, particularly in this case the ICB, to have that way of involving people and actually using their experience to drive change that we want to see as part of this health bill.
Question number 1. Sarah State.
Mr. Speaker, the NHS matters deeply to me, to every one of my colleagues and to people right across the country, and that is why we are not wasting a second in driving delivery and pushing forward with extending prostate cancer screening to protect men at most risk, appointing a new national maternity advisor to give every woman and baby a safe birth, accepting the Mann Review recommendations to rid the NHS of anti-Semitism and all forms of racism, and of course, with my honourable friend, the member for Bristol South, taking the NHS Modernisation Bill through its second reading last week. As Secretary of State, I am determined to accelerate modernisation and build an NHS that is fit for the future.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Following power outages at Eastbourne District General Hospital that left operations and births suspended, hospital bosses submitted a strategic bid of over £10 million to the Estate Safety Fund to urgently fix this, which was rejected. So how does the Secretary of State expect our hospital to provide consistent and safe care to patients without the power going out?
Mr. Speaker, I'm aware of the issues at Eastbourne District General Hospital, and patients, staff and visitors deserve better than power cuts and electrical failures. But that is why this government has set out a credible and deliverable plan to deliver the new hospitals programme. And I would gently remind the honourable gentleman, Mr. Speaker, and his constituents that many of the problems the NHS estate faces today stem from the NHS being starved of £37 billion of capital investment in the 2010s when the Lib Dems were in government.
Mr. Speaker, one of the biggest barriers to accessing community healthcare in Bracknell Forest is when constituents are told they aren't able to get routine diagnostic procedures done at their local GP or health centre and instead had to travel. One constituent with cancer was told he had to go to Guildford for a simple blood test. How will the introduction of a single patient record help break down some of these barriers?
I thank him for this question. And the single patient record gives clinicians that timely access to a single trusted record so that decisions can be made more efficiently, avoiding duplication, and people can spend more time with patients. And the system which makes all of a patient's information accessible in a single place will allow the sharing of patient data between different settings, as he outlines, and allow services to have more flexibility where services are made available.
Show Secretary of State Stuart Andrew.
Can I begin by welcoming the Secretary of State and the Honourable Lady to their places? Mr. Speaker, the Secretary of State was in the Treasury when it imposed VAT on compassionate access medicine programmes. These are programmes which, for some patients, especially children with cancer, provide a vital last chance to access treatment. The policy has already led to the closure of one scheme. Will he now commit to abolishing this tax before any more follow suit?
Well, Mr. Speaker, one thing I learnt when I was in the Treasury is that decisions about tax are taken by the Chancellor at fiscal events. So I'm certainly not, in my new role, going to start taking decisions about taxation at the dispatch box today. But the broader point here, Mr. Speaker, is how important it is to make sure we have the medicines that we need for the future. And that is why this government is investing so much in research, development and innovation to make sure we have those drugs that we need, we have the medicines we need to make sure we have the healthiest possible population in the future.
This needs decisive action now. These drugs are absolutely critical to some children. This cancer drugs tax has already closed one scheme, and companies are making real-time decisions now about whether to continue programmes in the United Kingdom. He must urgently get Treasury to permanently exempt compassionate medicines so patients in most need can get the vital drugs, because in some cases, it is simply their only hope.
Mr. Speaker, I've explained the position about decisions in relation to tax, but more broadly, Mr. Speaker, it is critical that we have the medicines of the future that we need. And one of my very first visits as Secretary of State for Health, Mr. Speaker, was to visit a company who are using AI to determine new opportunities for medicines and drugs to tackle cancers and some of the other illnesses that people face. Making sure that we're investing in businesses, British businesses, to drive that innovation is crucial not just to the future health of our country, but also to economic growth.
Mary Glendon.
Mr. Speaker, at the age of 6, Eric Lake was diagnosed with metachromatic leukodystrophy. MLD is treatable if diagnosed early. His parents, Tracy and Luke, are campaigning for newborn screening for the disease. In its last review of the condition, the National Screening Committee did not recommend screening, but outlined it as gathering more evidence. Will the Minister look at ways this process can be expedited?
Can I thank my honourable friend for raising this very important matter, and my sympathy is with the Lake family and I commend them for their advocacy on this issue. I am acutely aware of this matter, having met with the member for Upper Ban and her constituents on this issue last week in a very moving meeting. I can also assure my friend that the department is working with partners to see whether it is possible to set up a multi-condition evaluation so that not only MLD but other rare conditions can be assessed alongside the existing screening programmes.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson.
Very much, Mr. Speaker. A damning report by the Royal College of Emergency Medicine has estimated that there were more than 15,800 deaths associated with long waits in emergency departments in 2025, a figure that I think we would all agree is an outrage. But the government still hasn't published reliable data on long waits in corridor care, despite promising to do so by the end of May. So will the Minister tell the House what the government is trying to hide, and will they adopt Liberal Democrat calls to end corridor care within a year by freeing up beds throughout hospitals and in social care to end the blight of excess deaths in overcrowded A&E departments?
Mr. Speaker, let me be clear that corridor care is unacceptable, undignified, and we are committed to eradicating it. Mr. Speaker, we have begun by getting specialist teams to go into the worst offending trusts to make sure we are getting rid of corridor care in those places. The NHS now has a national definition of corridor care for the first time ever. We will publish data on that shortly because I believe, Mr. Speaker, that the first step in getting a grip of the problem is to be open and transparent about its scale.
Nadia Witt.
Mr. Speaker, we all know that social care is in crisis, with huge staff shortages, unmet needs, and councils' finances being pushed to the brink. So it's disappointing that the King's speech didn't contain anything on social care. With the full Casey review not expected until 2028 and implementation estimated to take up to 2036, what steps is the Minister taking now to alleviate pressures in the system? And will the government expedite social care reforms so we can meet our manifesto commitments on a national care service?
I thank my honourable friend for that question. I pay tribute to her in terms of the work that she did formerly as a care worker. This government inherited a social care system in desperate need of reform, and we are taking action, including providing over £4.6 billion of extra funding for adult social care by 28-29 and developing the first ever fair pay agreement for care workers. Baroness Casey will submit her first report this year with recommendations on the further action we should take to move towards a national care service.
Mr. Speaker, despite rising nationally, the number accessing NHS dentists in South Gloucestershire is falling, with less than a third of adults and half of children having been seen by an NHS dentist in the last 2 years. With no NHS dentists taking on patients and more going private, how will the government reverse this decline?
I thank her for that question. As I said to her honourable friend earlier, the fundamental long-term reform of the contract is vital to incentivise dentists to do NHS dentistry. But I am also very pleased by the fact that we have really put downward pressure on the underspend. And as a result of that, we're on track to deliver more than 2.5 million extra dental treatments than in the same period before the general election.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I recently held a health roundtable in Purbeck, and here volunteers from Parkinson's UK made clear that more needs to be done for all those living with the illness, and so they receive the robust support that they need. There was particular concern that a shift away from routine checkups could mean that many do not regularly see an experienced practitioner. Will the Minister work with me to ensure that the voices of people living with Parkinson's are listened to and their concerns are acted upon when any changes are made to the care that they receive?
People with Parkinson's disease should receive support tailored to their individual needs as symptoms progress. As symptoms and progression vary. The NHS provides specialist multidisciplinary NHS care informed by NICE guidance and improvement programmes such as Getting It Right First Time. People with Parkinson's will benefit from our wider work to strengthen community services, reducing waiting times and improve coordinated person-centred care closer to home. So I can assure the Honourable Gentleman that the Department will continue to meet regularly with Parkinson's UK to ensure their voices are heard.
Byfleet in my constituency of Woking lost its doctor's surgery in 2005, leaving residents having to struggle via the A245 to access basic health facilities that is set to get busier due to a likely housing development. Will the Minister agree to meet with me to ensure we can bring health facilities back to Byfleet again?
Well, I thank him for that question. We have got the £102 million utilisation and modernisation fund to enable more GP primary care estate. So that's an important point. Of course, we're also committed to delivering 120 more neighbourhood health centres by the end of this Parliament. So I hope that his ICB has put in an expression of interest for our neighbourhood health centre scheme, and I'd of course be prepared to discuss that with him further.
Debbie Abrahams.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There's overwhelming evidence, there's overwhelming evidence that marketised health systems, such as the NHS has become, actually increase health inequalities. So will the Health Secretary consider amendments to his health bill which will tackle the rising inequalities in existing health policies, including allowing local health and NHS organisations to determine if they need additional private sector capacity?
Well, I thank my honourable friend for that, and I commend her experience in this area. We don't have plans to, particularly she tempts me to look at amendments in that space at the moment. The changes that we make to NHS England place that responsibility firmly at the Secretary of State's doors on health inequalities in all our policies. I'm very happy to talk to her about other ideas that she has around that. The bill transforms that responsibility onto the Secretary of State, so we have no plans to make any changes in that area.
Alison Griffiths.
People in West Sussex are unable to access an NHS dentist, and many constituents in Bognor Regis and Littlehampton tell me they have been unable to secure an appointment for years. So what specific steps is the Secretary of State taking to increase NHS dental capacity in coastal communities, and when does he expect patients to see a measurable improvement?
Well, I thank her for that question. I've said to honourable members across the House today, there is the fundamental challenge around the dental contract. The units of dental activity doesn't work as a way of incentivising dentists to do NHS dentistry. So that fundamentally has to be fixed. But I am also very proud of the fact that thanks to the measures we've put in place, 2.5 million additional courses of treatment have been delivered compared to the same period before the general election.
Fairness.
Last year I had the opportunity to witness a TAVI procedure. This is a really groundbreaking procedure for people who require valve changes. I saw this, it was quite incredible, and I would recommend all of you go and see this procedure over in St Thomas's. The patient was 82, had been bedbound for weeks, but after that 20-minute surgery they were fit enough to be discharged later that same day and look after themselves. This has a massive impact, not just on the patient's life, but also for our NHS and the wider economy, as illustrated by Heart Valve's Optimal Pathway report. What steps is the department taking to not just on the patient, so to ensure NHS systems identify and treat?
I am aware of my honourable friend's significant work in this policy area, and she is absolutely right about the huge potential of TAVIs. Rise in national TAVI activity and improved getting it right first time pathways are part of our approach to reduce health inequalities and supporting more timely, equitable care. And through this work, the Government is committed to strengthening consistency in the diagnosis and treatment of heart valve disease, building on progress already made.
Phil Pinkerton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The relocation of Frimley Park Hospital in my constituency is a £1.8 billion project, but none of the costs of the essential infrastructure to enable this new site to go ahead have been costed or budgeted for. The chief executives of the hospital simply have said that those costs will have to come from the new hospital programme contingency fund. Does the Secretary of State agree with me that that is no way to start a project of such size, scale and significance, and would he meet with me to address those concerns?
Mr. Speaker, the honourable gentleman is persistent in raising this. He's raised this with me in the lunch queue as well. This is clearly an issue which I know matters to him and to honourable friends on my side of the House as well. But I think we need to
just say to the honourable member, when he's answering the question not to meant to walk in front, please show respect to each other. Secretary of State.
But, Mr. Speaker, the honourable gentleman can rest assured that this government is focused on the new hospitals programme, which is now credible and deliverable after what we inherited from the previous government, and we will get those hospitals in place.
Christine Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On Thursday, I will chair the Endometriosis APPG's first evidence session of our inquiry into endometriosis in the workplace, and we will look at the experiences of women living with the condition, the lack of timely treatment for chronic symptoms, and how this impacts them in the workplace. Will the Secretary of State commit to reviewing our recommendations once published later this year?
I commend the Honourable Lady for her great work and that of the APPG on highlighting the importance of endometriosis and the impact. We would be delighted to continue our close engagement with you and the APPG on this topic. We will consider the APPG's findings carefully when they are published as part of our ongoing work to improve diagnosis, treatment and support for women with endometriosis.
Helen Maguire.
Speaker, Epsom and St Helier hospitals need urgent funding now, not just patchwork repairs. In 2024, 600 operations were cancelled due to ventilation issues, and this situation is only going to get worse. So will the Minister address the backlog of hospital repairs now to ensure patients and staff have safe and modern facilities in Epsom and St Helier hospitals?
Mr Speaker, under this government, we have increased capital investment in our NHS estates, including hospitals, because, frankly, under the previous government, that was sorely lacking and stored up problems that we are now experiencing today. There is a huge amount that we need to invest in to make sure our NHS is fit for the future, but we also need to reform the service, which is why modernising the NHS is a key priority for me and this government.
Chris Webb.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. At the beginning of the year, Blackpool had the worst 12-hour A&E waiting times in the country, but thanks to the tireless work of local NHS staff, that's been reduced by 43%. However, we face some of the biggest challenges in the country with health inequalities, deprivation and the 21 million visitors that come every year. So would the Secretary of State agree to meet with me and our CEO of the hospital to talk about what support we can get to bring these numbers down so that residents in Blackpool can get the care they need?
I thank my honourable friend. I'm very happy to work with him to tackle health inequalities in his area. As he rightly highlights, our investment in the NHS and in the wider health of the nation is specifically about tackling health inequalities such as those that he raises and which affect the life chances of his constituents.
Joe Robertson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The crisis in social care is particularly bad in my constituency on the Isle of Wight, partly because of our unique geography, but also because the government has reduced funding to our local authority. And our council is now looking at discharging patients to the mainland away from family and friends, which is completely unacceptable. Will the government recognise our unique challenges as an English island and help provide a social care solution which recognises those challenges that we face?
I thank him, and we have discussed this issue, and I absolutely recognise the need to ensure that social care is provided in the most convenient way that is possible to his constituents and as close as possible to home. Obviously, we are fixing a broken system, but we have delivered £4.6 billion more of funding. We're delivering the Fair Pay Agreement, and we're working hard to ensure that we get adult social care back on its feet and fit for the future.
Justin Mathers.
My constituents were delighted to see the opening of the Great Sutton Medical Centre, but it has brought into sharp focus the need for an urgent upgrade of GP practices in Ellesmere Port Town Centre. I've submitted an expression of interest for the Neighbourhood Centre programme. I wonder if the Minister would agree to meet with me to discuss that further.
Well, I thank him for that question. I'm delighted that he submitted the expression of interest. We're now assessing proposals against criteria, including fit with our national neighbourhood health strategy, sound estates planning, deliverability, sustainability and critically local need. And we'll be prioritising areas where there is low life expectancy, higher deprivation. So I'd be delighted to meet with him to talk about his expression of interest and about our programme for revolutionising care in our country through the shift from hospital to community.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Unpaid carers play an absolutely crucial role in supporting so many people who need to draw on social care, thereby supporting our health service and our formal social care system. But they tell me they're under immense strain. They need more support. And they are, of course, more likely to be women and more likely to be older. Does the Minister recognise the urgent need for more respite care for unpaid carers? And will he take action to provide it now, not waiting a few years for the Casey Commission?
I thank her for that. She's absolutely right that unpaid carers are the lifeblood of our care system, and we pay tribute to them for the compassion that they show. I was very pleased that yesterday I accompanied the Minister from the DBT to launch the new Paid Carers Leave consultation document. I'm also very pleased to chair the cross-ministerial group that is going to produce an action plan for unpaid carers, addressing exactly the issues she mentioned about respite care.
Jen Craft.
Thank you,
Mr Speaker, last week the Supreme Court judgment that overturned Cheshire West, the previous judgment on the Mental Capacity Act, has thrown the sector who care for people with learning disabilities and or autism into what they have called chaos. There is significant concern that without further clarification as to whether someone can consent to deprivation of liberty who does not have mental capacity will lead to putting vulnerable people at significant risk. Will the Secretary of State listen to calls for...
Sorry, I've got to get through. I've other members again. You've got to shorten your questions to help me. Secretary.
Mr Speaker, I can reassure my honourable friend that the Government respects the Supreme Court decision. We are considering it very carefully and we will set out updated guidance shortly.
Paul Holmes.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Waiting times for cataract operations in my Hamble Valley constituency are rising hugely because the local ICB and its AI system have stopped offering all providers it advertises and have scrapped their contract with Specsavers, meaning only GPs can diagnose the problem. Will the Minister have a look at the local problem and intervene so that we have the widest and best possible providers to reduce those waiting lists?
He's absolutely right that getting the link between high street optometrists and secondary care working more effectively is vital. That's why I was very pleased to announce the £20 million e-referral investment earlier this week. We're also working on single point of access to get that digital interface working far more effectively, and he's right that we should be focusing on that more, and there's a lot more to do.
Adam Thompson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I want to raise eating disorders in relation to extreme exercise using app-based fitness classes, particularly people with very low BMI doing ultra-high intensity exercise for hours every day, and how these apps can become addictive. When I wrote to one brand asking about implementing access limitation tools in their app, they were dismissive. Will the Secretary of State then consider reviewing whether such tools could be mandated to support those with eating disorders?
Well, Mr Speaker, I thank my honourable friend for raising this issue because it's an important angle on a problem I think we're all aware of, but facing a slightly different context given some of the modern features which are available on devices in our pockets. So I thank him for raising that. I'll look into it further and pick up with him in due course.
Seamus Logan.
Mr Speaker, many members in this place will be all too familiar with the trauma of a miscarriage. For some, this tragedy occurs more than once. Scotland is the first nation in the UK to implement a miscarriage patient charter based on the so-called Tommy's graded model of miscarriage care. Could the new Secretary of State, and I welcome to his place, could he outline whether the Westminster Government are considering replicating that system here in the rest of the UK?
Well, I thank the honourable gentleman for raising an incredibly sensitive and important issue in his question. We want to make sure that as a government, through the NHS, we're supporting women who suffer miscarriages and their families. We will make sure that we have the right provision in place to support them, and that the NHS and the wider health system is there for them when they need that help.
Sadiq Kumar.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Dudley has high levels of deprivation and health inequalities. That's why I'm campaigning to bring healthcare on Dudley Town High Street. Can the Minister meet with me to discuss how we can leverage the 10-year plan to reduce these health inequalities in Dudley? And does he agree that we need a healthcare hub?
Well, I would definitely agree that my honourable friend is a formidable champion for her constituency, and she's absolutely right to raise the importance of making sure healthcare is easily accessible in places like high streets where people can access it easily. I'm very keen to make sure that the Neighbourhood Health Centres programme, 250 of which we've announced, 120 by 2030, are delivered as quickly as possible, and that's part of our plan to make sure that healthcare gets right into every local neighbourhood and community, and I look forward to discussing that further with my honourable friend in the future.
Sir Desmond Swain.
May I have a meeting to discuss my Parents, Carers and Babies Bill, which affords support to the Best Start Family Hubs and Healthy Babies programme?
I thank the honourable gentleman for that question, and we know that the earliest stages of a child's life are critical for their development, and the government is committed to supporting families to give babies the best start in life, and we are investing over £900 million in Best Start family hubs and healthy babies to create an integrated, accessible system of support for families. I particularly look forward to considering the merits of the Right Honourable Member's Private Members Bill that he presents to Parliament, and I would indeed look forward to meeting with him to discuss that further.
Dr Rupert.
There's 500,000 celiac sufferers in the UK, but there's little understanding of the condition that's massively underdiagnosed. So can I invite everyone here, even you, Mr Speaker, to the drop-in that I'm doing on Tuesday the 16th with the campaign? And in particular, can they have a follow-up meeting with my honourable friend, the Minister, the member for Gateshead and Washington, as she has been a long-standing advocate and gets it?
Well, I thank my honourable friend and neighbour for her question today, and it's very welcome that she's raised this matter in the Chamber, drawing attention to so many members on both sides of the House. I don't want to speak on behalf of my honourable friend, but I'm getting a nod from my friend, the Minister. We should be happy to pick this up with you in future.
That completes questions. We've got statements, haven't we? We've got statements. Yeah, these points of order come after statements.
Thank you.
Take care. Now come to the urgent question. Gavin Robinson.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. I wish to ask the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland if he will make a statement on reports of a serious, violent attack in North Belfast involving a foreign national and the implications for public safety, immigration enforcement and community cohesion.
Mr Speaker, I'm grateful to the Right Honourable Gentleman for his question. Shortly after 10:30 p.m. last night, a man in his 40s was subjected to an horrific, sustained knife attack in a street in North Belfast. He is in hospital in a serious condition, having suffered very severe injuries. I know the thoughts of the whole House will be with him and his loved ones at what must be a time of unimaginable distress. The response from the Police Service of Northern Ireland was immediate. A man in his 30s was arrested on suspicion of attempted murder. He remains in police custody, and the PSNI are continuing to investigate. They have declared it a critical incident. But amidst the horror of what happened, we also saw something extraordinary. When confronted with scenes of terrifying violence, members of the public did not walk on by. Instead, a number of them stepped forward, and at immense risk to their own safety, they intervened to pull the assailant away and protect the victim until the police arrived. To those individuals, I would like to say this. You showed the very best of humanity, and you have the profound gratitude of this entire House. This was a horrific and brutal attack, and the PSNI are seeking to provide support and reassurance to the local community. The Chief Constable, to whom I have spoken twice this morning, and his officers have our full, unwavering support as they pursue their inquiries. I would also like to repeat their appeal not to share or repost footage of the attack out of respect for the victim's family. Mr Speaker, I echo the words of the Prime Minister this morning that there is no place for such violence on our streets. All of us have a responsibility now to urge calm and let the police do their job.
Gavin Robinson.
Mr Speaker, can I firstly thank you for granting this urgent question. The attempted murder in Belfast last night was chilling. What has been seen by thousands already across the country cannot be unseen. It was medieval. The systematic mutilation and attempted slaughter of a citizen of Belfast on our streets. Mr. Speaker, my prayers are with the victim, and I similarly praise the brave man who, with a hurl in his hand, intervened to save his neighbour's life, and this House should praise him too. Mr. Speaker, what occurred last night will have profound implications for community cohesion in this country. This needs to be a time for honesty and openness and truth. Will he confirm that he and his government recognise that uncontrolled immigration needs to end? Will he confirm that the government needs to reassure and protect our population who for too long have had their concerns ignored? And knowing that he and the Chief Constable and I share a concern that there could be violence, and express my wish and our collective desire for calm, that community cohesion lies on the precipice. Will he confirm that the actions last night in no way reflect or represent the values of our nation? That the victim belongs in Belfast, but the attacker does not? Having abused the privilege of our nation, the perpetrator living in the UK under a 5-year visa needs to be convicted and deported on the first flight out on a one-way ticket.
Well, I would say to the right honourable gentleman, first of all, the footage that many people have seen is indeed truly horrifying. On his last point, as he will be well aware, any foreign national who abuses the hospitality of this country to commit crime should be in no doubt of our determination to deport them. We need to allow the criminal justice process to take place. On his question about net migration, as he will know, it is now down 82% from the peak reached under the previous government. But I would most particularly echo what he has said in appealing for calm, because we have seen previously in Belfast in August 2024 and in Ballymena in 2025 what happens after horrific incidents when there is disorder on the streets, because it is the communities that suffer, it is innocent people who suffer and whose lives can be put at risk. And that is why all political leaders have such a solemn responsibility to urge the calm that I have called for in my response to his question today.
Chris Ball.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I thank the Secretary of State for his statement, and can I also thank my right honourable friend for asking the question. As a member of the Northern Ireland Select Committee, I've visited Belfast on several occasions and have been struck by the incredible nature of the community spirit and the incredible city. What we witnessed last night is the worst of humanity, but also the best of humanity. I think it is incredible that bystanders came to the aid of that individual suffering a brutal attack. Can the Secretary of State assure me that the PSNI will be given every resource they need to conduct a swift investigation and ensure that all facts are shared with the public? And can we also ensure that those brave people who rushed to the aid of one of our own countrymen is given the honour and the reward that they deserve for representing the best of our humanity?
Well, I say to my honourable friend that I know from the conversations I've had with the Chief Constable this morning that the PSNI are treating this, of course, as the House would expect, with the utmost seriousness and are pursuing their inquiries. We need to let the police investigation and, in due course, any criminal justice process take its place. I am in favour of as much information being shared as soon as possible, and I would report to the House, Mr. Speaker, that the PSNI will be holding a press conference in approximately 5.5 minutes' time to provide more information about the incident. I also join my honourable friend in expressing hope that the bravery that we saw on the streets of North Belfast last night may in due time be recognised.
Minister Matt Vickers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to echo the Secretary of State's comments in condemning this dreadful attack. Last night's attack in North Belfast was horrifying, appalling and deeply disturbing. This was a brutal act of violence that will have sent shockwaves through the local community and caused huge concern across the city, Northern Ireland and the whole of the United Kingdom. My thoughts, and I'm sure those of the whole of the House, are with the victim whose condition has been described as serious. I also want to pay tribute to the PSNI and members of the public who displayed remarkable courage in stepping in to confront the attacker before the police arrived. The police service of Northern Ireland must be given the time and space to carry out a full and thorough investigation, and those responsible must face the full force of the law. However, given the understandable public concerns surrounding the incident, it's vital that the facts are established and we have the transparency that people deserve. Can the Secretary of State confirm the immigration status of the attacker? If, as is reported, the attacker is a foreign national, what steps will the Home Office take? It is urgent the facts are put on the public record to avoid speculation and prevent an information vacuum which the Independent Review of Terror Legislation has warned about. If there has been failings on our borders, this is yet another reminder that we do need stronger borders, and this is why we believe it is time to leave the ECHR. I encourage all who have evidence of the attack to come forward and support the PSNI in its investigation. I join the Secretary of State and all communities in condemning this horrific attack.
Secretary of State.
Well, I'm grateful to the honourable gentleman for his comments and for the tone in which he expressed them, because it is, I think, very important that we act responsibly in these circumstances. I agree, as I've already indicated, that information should be made available to the public. The proper procedure in answering his very specific question is for the PSNI to be in contact with the Home Office, which I know they have been doing, in order to establish the facts around the individual. And I would anticipate, as I say, it's proper that the police provide that, as they are leading the investigation, and I anticipate that more information will be made available shortly by the PSNI, is the right and proper approach. I would have to say, however, I do not agree with what he said about the European Convention of Human Rights. It's very important. We have it because it protects the liberty of all of us.
Dr. L. Pinkerton, Liberal Democrat spokesperson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The reports from Kinnaird Avenue are indeed deeply distressing. My thoughts are with the victim and with his family. I pay tribute to the residents who did the extraordinary thing of running towards danger, intervened to restrain the attacker and help protect another person's life. I also thank police officers and paramedics who responded with such speed and professionalism. Their actions almost certainly saved a life yesterday evening. What I know of North Belfast is that it's a community that has worked hard to build trust across long-standing divides, and that residents will be as horrified by this attack as the rest of us. Will the Secretary of State reassure residents that they will be kept safe in the days ahead, confirm that the PSNI have the support that it needs to maintain a visible presence, and make clear that no one should exploit one individual's actions to cast suspicion on a whole community?
Well, I agree with the honourable gentleman in everything that he said, and I know that the PSNI is working hard to provide reassurance to the local community and to make arrangements for that reassurance to be visible. In the face of those, let us be frank in this House, who will wish to use this terrible event to stir up trouble and to seek disorder on the streets of Northern Ireland. And I say that because we have seen it before. We do not wish to see it again, and that is why all community leaders, politicians and others have such a responsibility to call for the calm that he himself has so eloquently called for.
Jim Shannon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I, first of all, thank the Secretary of State for his well-chosen words, wise words as well, and for his answers. Tensions are inflamed, and at this moment I'm aware of planned protests throughout my constituency of Strangford, and I'm also aware that many of those who intend to attend do so not because they are frightened for their family alone, but instead feel their fears are ignored when they make a good and grand statement. So how can the Secretary of State and this government ensure that people from Portavogie to Newton Ards know that their right to peacefully protest is respected, but more than this, that their government, my government, will make changes for safety reasons as a matter of urgency? Thank you so much.
Okay. Well, I join with the honourable member in reasserting the right of every citizen of our country to protest peacefully. But we have seen in the past that there are those, provoked by others, who have sought to use that opportunity to then promote violence and disorder. And I join with him in saying peaceful protest, of course, everyone has the right to express their view. But in the end, if we want to support the PSNI, the last thing people should be doing is stretching their resources across Northern Ireland to deal with protests that aren't going to help anyone and are not going to assist in the furtherance of this investigation, so the perpetrator can be brought to face justice. That is the way we do things in our country, is it?
Jim Allison.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We're all shocked by the sheer savagery of this attack, and indeed the only bright spot in this orgy of violence was the brave intervention of local citizens whose courage we salute. But what I want to know, and what I know my constituents want to hear, is what will be done to stop the importation of an alien culture that thinks it's appropriate to try and behead someone within the United Kingdom. And on the immigration status of this person, did they hold a visa before they came to the United Kingdom? Did they obtain a visa having come illegally to the United Kingdom? I think we're entitled to know. And I do say to the Secretary of State, this House should be getting its information from the Secretary of State, not from the press conference of a Chief Constable. And I think the House is entitled to know, because there's truth and transparency, which is the greatest antidote to rising tensions. So can we have the answers?
Secretary of State.
Well, I would say I'm sorry that the honourable gentleman used the word alien culture, because what exactly is he referring to? What the British people have had enough of, or anyone from wherever they come, whatever their background, who seeks to commit violence on citizens of the United Kingdom. That is what we together are strongly opposed to. There is a proper procedure that needs to be followed in relation to the release of information. It is a live investigation. I think it is right and proper that the police lead on that, and that is why it is the police who have been in touch with the Home Office and will provide further information. And as soon as I am also able to update the House, I will do so. I am also in favour of as much information as possible being provided once process has been followed to make sure that it can be confirmed.
Julian Lewis.
Whilst I agree with virtually everything the Secretary of State said in his opening response, I really am baffled by his refusal to share with the House a piece of simple information. Did this person come legally into this country and has a 5-year visa because he came legally, or was he given this visa after entering the country illegally? This information will come out sooner or later, and what we have learnt from similar terrible incidents like this is the longer it is withheld, the worse the rumour mill goes into action.
Well, I do understand the last point that the right honourable gentleman makes, but it is very important in these circumstances to be absolutely sure about the facts before they are released. And the proper vehicle for doing that is the PSNI being in touch with the Home Office, which is what has been happening this morning. As the right honourable gentleman may be aware, the police originally said they believed him to be of one nationality. It may well turn out that he is in fact of another nationality, which does demonstrate the point I'm trying to put to the House, that it is important that the police lead on that so that the full facts can come out and then they can be made available to the House and to the country.
Lee Anderson.
Mr. Speaker, of course, the Secretary of State will know the answer to this question. Did the assailant enter the United Kingdom as an illegal migrant stroke asylum seeker?
Well, until I am in a position, by talking to the honourable gentleman's asked me a question, would he do me the courtesy of allowing me to answer it? Until I am in a position to have that confirmed, I cannot confirm it to the House. As soon as I can, I will. But as I've already explained, it is the PSNI that is leading on answering the very legitimate question that he has asked.
Robin Swan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The Right Honourable Member for East Belfast described this incident as medieval. It wasn't just medieval, it was pure evil when we saw what happened on the streets of the United Kingdom. And while tribute has been paid for those members of the general public who stepped in and the emergency services that responded, can I also seek a reassurance from the Secretary of State that those members of the general public who stepped in will actually be recognised and not be persecuted or prosecuted for the actions that they actually took in regards to attacking that individual? And can I also encourage the Secretary of State to come forward and fill the vacuum of information that's out there, because he does know more than I think he is telling the House at this minute in time in regards to this incident?
It was an act of pure evil. I agree with the honourable gentleman in saying that. I'm surprised that he suggests there's any possibility of those who came to the aid of the victim should be at risk of prosecution because they were trying to save him when judging by the footage, when the attacker was trying to inflict great harm upon him. And my judgment, having looked at that, is what they did was proportionate and fair. But that is for others to judge. It is important that they are recognised. I've already indicated the House. As soon as I have information that is confirmed and which I can be sure of, I will inform the House.
Gregory Capp.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Tens of thousands of people are horrified at the circulation online of the video that the Secretary of State has alluded to. And while he quite rightly congratulates the members of the public who intervened, and they did, whether it was a hurl bat or a cricketing bat, they took action. But what we need to see now, as tension rises, we need to see government action to restrict and inhibit people arriving in this country illegally, some of which carry out the actions that we saw on the streets of Belfast last night.
Well, the honourable gentleman will be well aware of the action that the government is taking to deal with illegal migration. And I've also made clear to the House the steps we take if anyone, however they came to the country or whether they are from this country, commits a criminal offence, they will face due process. And any foreign national, regardless of how they came, who abuses our hospitality and commits crimes, can expect to be deported at the end of their sentence.
Cole Lockhart.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My thoughts are very much with the victim of this horrific attack last night, and I want to also echo the calls for calm in our communities. Communities in Northern Ireland are angry, they are demanding answers, and they deserve answers. Sadly today, I don't feel they're getting those answers, and it's not lost on the people of North Belfast, who is in this place today speaking up for working class communities who are very concerned about uncontrolled immigration and the fact that many houses now, that mayors won't even tell how many houses they have full of immigrants. So my question is, was this individual known to the authorities? How many other from the same country are currently being accommodated in Northern Ireland? How did they enter the UK, and what action this government is taking to prevent abuse of our immigration system, including via the land border within the Republic of Ireland?
Well, I say to the honourable member that the public are right to be angry about what they witnessed in that appalling video and what they have heard about the attack that took place. As I've already indicated to the House, I mean, some of the questions that she's asked, I will endeavour to come back to her on. Others will be provided in due course once the facts have been checked. It's really important that the facts are checked before information is given to the House, because I wouldn't want to stand here and say one thing and it turns out that is not the case. So checking that thoroughly is a responsibility on me before I inform the House, and that is what I intend to do.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I also echo the sentiments of members in this House in sending my thoughts and prayers to the victim of this horrific attack? And in specific, can I also extend my gratitude to the local community who bravely intervened? What we all must do now is encourage calm at this most troubling time and stop tensions from further being inflamed. And to that end, does the Minister agree that we must not let the heinous actions of one person be taken as an opportunity to taint an entire community, and that we should not and must not attempt to fill the gaps whilst the story and the police investigation continues to deliver justice to the victim and their family?
Well, I do agree with the honourable gentleman when he says that. And when I think back to those who were attacked in the wake of the terrible events in Southport and then in Ballymena, we know that in Northern Ireland, certain of individuals were attacked. It had nothing to do with any of this, simply because of the colour of their skin. And that is not what this country is about. Identify an attacker, due process in due course after investigation. Do not cast aspersions on a whole community. Many people from all backgrounds contributing so much to our national life.
Adam.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the Secretary of State for that answer. And following on, I myself also give my deepest sympathies for the victims and his family and pay tribute to the bystanders who intervene at this horrific case. Does the Secretary of State agree with me, as he has already expressed, further that crime and heroes come in all different hues and colours? Like we have seen in Cambridgeshire in the train, as the stabber of the Saudi student in Cambridgeshire in the picturesque streets last year. It doesn't matter which background you come from, and it's a responsibility for members in this House to temper their inflammatory remarks so we do not see actions like we did last week in Southampton, where innocent police officers are having to go into hiding.
Well, I would say to the honourable member, we all have a responsibility by our actions and our words not to inflame. And we all have a responsibility, as I indicated in answering the Right Honourable Gentleman's original question, to plead for calm in these circumstances. That is the right thing to do on behalf of all the people of Northern Ireland.
Richard Tice.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Calm is essential after this horrific, brutal attack. We all know that. The Secretary of State has referred to further information coming out as we speak. Will he therefore commit to returning to this House later today, if possible, to update the House on the important information around the suspect and any other information?
I'm very happy to say to the honourable gentleman, I will report to the House in an appropriate form as soon as I am able to do so.
Right, that completes the questions. Let the front benches change over. We now come to the statement. Foreign Secretary Vet Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With permission, I would like to make a statement on the Middle East, first on the Iran conflict and Lebanon, second on the situation in Palestine. And can I apologise to the Shadow Foreign Secretary and also to the Speaker and to the House for the delay in sending across the copy of the statement. Mr. Speaker, this weekend we saw worrying and dangerous escalation. Lebanese Hezbollah continuing to fire into northern Israel, Israeli strikes against southern areas of Beirut, and the direct exchange of missiles between Iran and Israel, presenting one of the most dangerous moments since the fragile ceasefire was agreed. Over the last 48 hours, we have made clear the need for urgent de-escalation, because the resumption of conflict is in no one's interest, and I spoke to the Iranian Foreign Minister on Sunday evening to convey this directly. Both Israel and Iran have indicated that they have ended their strikes, and that is welcome. But there was some reporting just before I entered the chamber of strikes again this morning. It's vital that we have a diplomatic way forward, both to end the conflict in Lebanon, to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, to restore regional stability and prevent Iran ever developing or obtaining a nuclear weapon. As we have previously made clear in this House, Israel's recent escalation in Lebanon was reckless and disproportionate and deepened the humanitarian crisis that has already seen more than 1 million Lebanese people driven from their homes and thousands killed. But we strongly condemn Hezbollah's attacks against Israel, including its northern communities, because at Iran's instigation, Hezbollah, a proscribed organisation, is dragging Lebanon into a war that is against the interests of its people and its government. It must end this dangerous attacks and disarm. And the US-brokered ceasefire in Lebanon must be properly observed by all parties. We want to see a swift and successful conclusion to the ongoing talks between the US and Iran. We need an agreement that gets the strait fully open with no tolls or charges. And last week I discussed this with Foreign Minister Wang Yi in China and Foreign Minister Jaishankar in India. Every country has a stake in freedom of navigation, and the UK will continue to speak up for this across the world. And in partnership with France and other countries, we stand ready to play our part once agreement is reached to support demining and provide reassurance to shipping through a multilateral maritime mission. With cost of living pressures at home, we need a lasting settlement which delivers peace and stability in the region and the full restoration of global trade. Let me turn now to Palestine. 9 months ago at the UN General Assembly, I confirmed the UK's historic decision to recognise the state of Palestine. And we did so alongside partners in recognition of the inalienable right of the Palestinian people and to defend the viability of a two-state solution. We did so as part of a wave of international diplomatic energy in support of peace in the Middle East, and it was a crucial moment of hope that we could end the violence and suffering and begin to build a better future of lasting peace and security for Palestine, Israel, and the wider region. But today the situation is bleak, and the viability of the two-state solution remains in grave peril. Let me turn first to Gaza. The ceasefire remains formally in place, but it is being regularly violated. Since October, over 900 Palestinians in Gaza have been killed. 1.9 million Palestinians remain displaced and dependent on humanitarian aid, and aid is down this year, not up, with 90% of water and sanitation infrastructure destroyed and not rebuilt, families without shelter, a public health crisis with rodent infestations and communicable disease, and currently at barely half the level of the 4,200 trucks a week promised in the 20-point plan. Israel's registration law continues to severely restrict international NGO operations while key crossings remain closed. And it is a total moral outrage that children are still going hungry while food they need rots on shelves because aid agencies cannot get in. Meanwhile, Hamas decommissioning has not yet started, and they retain a tight hold on areas of Gaza. And instead of the phased withdrawal of Israeli troops, Gazans are restricted to just 40% of the territory, unable to access their land beyond the yellow line. And Mr. Speaker, we urgently need new international energy, new pressure, and new action to resuscitate the 20-point plan. For the UK, that means pressure in 3 priority areas. First, increased aid is urgent and must be unconditional. Despite all the challenges, UK aid is making a difference on the ground. Last year, we provided over £80 million of humanitarian and early recovery funding, with funding protected again this year, enabling 650,000 people to receive food and improving access to water, sanitation and hygiene for 300,000 people. UK support for mine clearance has enabled 45 acres of land to be made safe for community use and helped clear 24 key sites, including medical facilities. And today I can announce another further £1 million to support these mine clearance efforts. But some UK aid is still stuck in warehouses, including in Jordan and Egypt. And humanitarian support is a fundamental right. It cannot be bartered against other aspects of the peace plan. So the Netanyahu government must recognise its urgent humanitarian responsibility to open crossings and to end the arbitrary restrictions so the UN, UNRWA and international NGOs can fulfil their life-saving mandates. Second, we continue to press for the decommissioning of Hamas weapons to get underway. Hamas must destroy its terrorist infrastructure and weapons production sites as a first step towards full demilitarisation. And we have offered UK technical expertise to support this. Meanwhile, Israel must deliver on its commitments to withdraw. And third, we need the practical support and access that was promised for the Transitional Palestinian National Committee. There are still too many obstacles in its path, and it is still not operating within Gaza itself. That makes it easier for Hamas to retain its hold. We've offered practical support to the committee as they endeavour to fulfil their mandate, and we will lead international calls to support them in coordination with the Palestinian Authority, because Palestine should be run by Palestinians. Which brings me to the West Bank. Following to the ceasefire agreement, I warned that sustained peace would not be possible without a comparable effort to protect the viability of Palestinian statehood and rights in the West Bank. Instead, we have seen the opposite.